She drained my account overnight. My own daughter. That sentence keeps circling in my head, like a song I never wanted to remember. I was sitting at the kitchen table that morning, half awake, drinking coffee from my old mug, the one that says, "World's Best Teacher." Same mug I've used for 20 years. Same mug that used to remind me I was doing something right. The light from my laptop screen was the only thing bright in the room. I logged in to pay my electric bill, like I always did. And then I froze. Balance, 0.00. I blinked, refreshed the page. Still 0. I leaned closer, the way you do when you think your eyes must be wrong. But my eyes weren't. 30 years of saving. Gone. The little safety net I built after my husband died. Gone. Every dollar I'd ever said no to myself for vanished. I called the bank, hands shaking. The woman on the phone spoke in that polite, robotic tone that feels like a slap. "Yes, ma'am. The withdrawal was processed under the joint account with your daughter, Clara Collins." That word joint hit me in the gut. Clara had asked to be added to my account years ago. Said she'd help me manage things online. She told me it was safer that way. And I believed her. Because when you're a mother, trust isn't a decision. It's a habit. But the habit just cost me my life's work. The woman asked, "Would you like to file a dispute?" I whispered, "Against my own daughter?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. When the call ended, I just sat there, numb, hollow, floating. And then my hand brushed the mug, the one that said, "World's Best Teacher." It slipped, hit the floor, shattered. The sound was sharp, clean, like the universe saying, "Lesson over." Coffee splashed across the tiles, dark and wide, like a stain that wouldn't come out. I stared at it and thought, there goes the last thing I believed about myself. By noon, the bank confirmed it wasn't fraud. It was authorized. That word, legal, tidy, somehow hurt worse because it meant there'd be no one to arrest, no one to blame, just me, and a daughter I didn't recognize anymore. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that you forgot they could hurt you, stay with me, because what broke that morning wasn't just a mug. It was everything I thought love was made of. News travels fast in small towns. Faster than healing, faster than truth. By the next morning, it felt like everyone already knew. The cashier at the grocery store smiled too kindly. The pastor's wife hugged me too long. And when people look at you with that kind of kindness, you know they're really just relieved it isn't them. I tried to keep my head up, tried to act normal. But whispers have a way of crawling under the skin. At the farmer's market that weekend, 2 women were standing by the apple stand, pretending to check prices. They weren't talking loud, but they didn't have to. Such a shame. Her daughter was always the bright one. Maybe she pushed the girl too hard. Sometimes control looks a lot like love, you know. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I picked the bruised apples, the ones nobody wanted, and walked away before they could make eye contact. When I got to the parking lot, I saw a familiar face. Mr. Johnson, one of my old colleagues from the high school. He was slower now, older, but still had that same soft voice. "Margaret," he said, "I heard about everything. I'm sorry." I nodded, hoping that would be enough. But then he added quietly, "If your own blood turns on you, maybe it says something about the soil." Soil. That word stuck in my chest, like I was a failed garden, and my daughter was proof I'd never learned how to grow anything right. I smiled, the polite kind that hides panic, and said, "Take care of yourself, John." Then I walked away fast, clutching my grocery bag so tight The plastic tore and cut into my hand. Blood beaded up between my fingers, bright and angry. I didn't even feel it at first. That night, I cooked dinner for one. Soup from a can, crackers from a box. It tasted like cardboard, but I made myself finish it. Because routine was the only thing still standing. The news on TV played softly in the background. A story about teachers shaping young lives. A clip showed a woman at her classroom desk, smiling with pride. I recognized the mug in her hand. World's best teacher, just like mine. I turned the TV off. The silence hit like a second betrayal. I tried to pray, but every time I said, "Lord," my throat tightened, because I wasn't sure if I was praying for Clara to come home or for me to stop missing her. The next morning, I went back to the grocery store. Not because I needed anything, but because staying home made the walls feel like witnesses. As I was walking past the bakery, I saw a group of my former students. They were laughing, loud and carefree, like life hadn't touched them yet. When they saw me, the laughter dimmed. One of them whispered, "That's her." They looked away quickly, the way people do when they're afraid your pain might be contagious. I smiled again, that same empty smile, and walked out before the tears could find their way down. By the third week, I stopped going to church. The pastor preached about forgiveness one Sunday. "Love keeps no record of wrongs," he said. But when the service ended, no one met my eyes. I didn't need forgiveness. I needed dignity. And that, apparently, was harder to find. So I built a routine. Mornings at the market, afternoons cleaning the same spotless kitchen, evenings sitting by the window, watching other people live their lives. Some nights, I'd open old photo albums, birthdays, graduations, Christmases. I'd trace her smile with my finger, like I could still reach her through the paper. In one photo, she's 5, holding a snow globe I gave her. The caption I'd written under it said, "My little miracle." I stared at it until the snow inside settled and whispered, "Where did we go wrong, my miracle?" There's a different kind of shame that comes when you can't even hate the person who hurt you, because hating them would be easier than remembering who they used to be. And so you pretend. You smile when people say, "Time heals." You nod when they talk about karma. But deep down, you know this isn't punishment. It's exposure. Life turning you inside out. One evening, I decided to walk down to the lake near the school. The benches were still the same. Old wood, initials carved by students in love. Mine and my husband's were still there. M+T always. The always had faded. The wind was cold. And for a moment, I let myself cry. No hiding, no pretending, just tears, falling the way they wanted to. A young woman walked by with her little girl. The girl tugged on her mother's coat and asked, "Why's that lady crying?" Her mother bent down, whispered something I couldn't hear. But I saw the girl glance back at me with that wide-eyed innocence that only children have. Like she saw straight through to the truth. Maybe she did. I sat there until the streetlights came on. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just grieving Clara. I was grieving the version of myself that everyone else believed in. The teacher, the good mother, the steady one. Now, all that was left was a woman people pitied in the checkout line. If you've ever lost, not just someone you love, but the reputation that told the world who you were, you'll understand what I mean when I say, grief is one kind of death, but shame is burial with your eyes still open. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been judged for a story people didn't even understand? If yes, type yes below. And if no, tell me, how do you stay kind when the world keeps pointing fingers? because that's what I couldn't figure out back then. How to be kind to a world that already decided who I was. Nights got longer after that. Not because of the dark, but because I couldn't turn the lights off. Silence had become too loud. I kept the TV on most evenings, just for company. The voices didn't help much, but they were better than the sound of my own thoughts. One night, I was flipping through channels when I saw a familiar face. Clara's college graduation. The station was running an old local feature, Future Innovators of America. There she was, walking across the stage, shaking hands, radiant, her cap tilted slightly, her smile unafraid. And then the camera cut to the audience. There I was, front row, clapping, beaming. The announcer said, "Behind every great student, there's a teacher who believed in them." I stared at that version of me, the woman on the screen. Her eyes bright, her back straight, her hands steady. She looked alive, whole, I whispered. That woman, she died the day her daughter walked away. My voice cracked, but the TV didn't care. It kept playing, like a cruel time machine that only goes one way. After that night, I stopped checking my email, my mailbox, my phone. There was no news worth hearing anyway. Each day felt like walking through the outline of a life that used to fit. The house felt bigger somehow. The echo of footsteps sharper, colder. I'd pass her old room and pause every single time. It still smelled faintly of lavender and ink, the scent of her teenage years. On the wall above her desk were faint pencil sketches. Tiny houses with solar panels, stick figures holding hands, the same ones she used to draw in class when she thought I wasn't looking. I used to scold her for daydreaming. Now those doodles felt like the only things still breathing in this house. I touched one with my fingertips, the graphite smudging faintly onto my skin. It left a mark, gray and soft, like a ghost, reminding me she was real. I started spending nights in the living room instead of my bedroom. Couldn't stand the bed anymore. The left side was too empty. Even the clock on the nightstand ticked too loud. Each second felt like an accusation. You failed, you failed, you failed. So I'd fall asleep on the couch, the TV glow flickering across my face. Sometimes I'd dream of her, little again, chasing bubbles in the yard, yelling, "Catch them, Mama, before they pop!" In the dream, I'd reach out and wake up to an empty room. One evening, while cleaning out drawers I hadn't opened in years, I found an old camcorder, the kind that runs on mini tapes. Inside was a label, Clara, 5th grade science fair. I hesitated, then plugged it into the TV. The screen flickered, static, then color. There she was, younger, shy but determined, standing in front of a cardboard display that said, "Renewable energy for all." Her voice crackled through the speakers. "One day, I'll build houses that make their own power, so people don't have to worry about bills." The crowd laughed, not cruelly, just indulgently, and the camera wobbled as I whispered behind it, "That's my girl." I remembered that moment, how proud I was, how certain I was that the world would never hurt her. And now, the world wasn't what broke her. It was me. I paused the video, froze it on her smile. The edges of the screen glowed faintly, like it was trying to reach me. I whispered, "You really tried to build something, didn't you, Clara? I just didn't have the courage to believe you could." The silence that followed wasn't empty this time. It was heavy, full of things I should have said when there was still time. People always talk about losing themselves, like it's a slow fade. But mine was instant. One click, one transfer, one daughter choosing a dream over a mother's comfort zone. I stopped recognizing the woman in the mirror, her hair grayer, her shoulders smaller, her eyes, not angry, not sad, just tired, like someone who's been holding her breath for too long. Sometimes I'd stand there, brushing my teeth, staring at her and wondering, when did I become someone I wouldn't talk to? There was a photo on the hallway wall. Me and my husband on our wedding day. He had that smile, the one that made me believe I could handle anything. He died, believing I could too. And for years, I did, until the one person left who needed me didn't. I ran my hand along the frame and whispered, "You'd know what to do, Tom. I don't." The lights flickered slightly. Or maybe that was just my vision blurring again. The hardest part of losing your child isn't the distance. It's the doubt. Because every day you ask yourself, what if she's fine without me? And the answer burns worse than grief. It's strange how pain can feel like proof that you still matter. So I kept holding on to it. Because if I stopped hurting, what was left? A few weeks later, a letter came from the Teachers Association. They were closing nominations for the annual Lifetime Impact Award. A student had apparently sent in my name before all this happened. There was a space at the bottom of the form for me to confirm participation. I stared at it for a long time, then threw it in the trash, because the impact I'd made was standing somewhere out there, using my money, my trust, my teachings, and I didn't know whether to be proud or ashamed. That night, I replayed the graduation clip one more time. The younger me smiling, clapping, believing she'd done everything right. And I realized that woman wasn't coming back. But maybe something else could. Something quieter, smaller, still breathing under all the noise. I turned off the TV, walked into the kitchen, and whispered to the darkness, "Tomorrow, I'm going to do something different." I didn't know what yet, but for the first time in months, it felt like a promise instead of a sentence. The next morning, I got up before the sun. No reason, just couldn't stand lying down anymore. The bed felt too much like waiting. I made coffee, but it tasted like metal. Maybe because I was drinking it out of a chipped mug. Not that mug, of course. The world's best teacher one was long gone. As I stood there staring out the window, I thought about that promise I'd made to myself the night before. Tomorrow, I'll do something different. Different didn't mean brave. It just meant moving. That afternoon, I saw a sign outside the cafe near the bus station. Help wanted, late shift. I hesitated at the door. I was 62. My knees ached when it rained. I'd spent decades teaching literature, not scrubbing tables. But bills don't care about resumes. So I walked in. The manager, a woman named Denise, looked surprised, but kind. "We could use someone steady," she said. "You sure about the night shift?" I nodded. "I'm sure about needing work." The first few weeks were quiet. I didn't talk much, and the customers didn't either. Most were travelers or locals avoiding their own lives. But every night around 9:30, a man came in. Same booth, same order. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. He looked to be in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. Silver hair, steady eyes, hands that looked like they'd known both work and rest. He never brought a phone, never rushed, just read from a small leather notebook and sipped his coffee like time wasn't chasing him. Denise said his name was Mr. Sage, Orion Sage. He lived alone, somewhere out near the lake. For weeks, we didn't exchange more than a polite nod. But one night, the rain came hard, that cold kind that seeps through everything. The cafe was empty. I was wiping tables when he said, without looking up, "Rain never forgets where it fell." I turned, unsure if he was talking to me. He glanced out the window, eyes following the rivulets down the glass. "It always returns to the same ground, sometimes as rivers, sometimes as floods. I frowned. That's a strange thing to say to a waitress. He smiled faintly. You look like someone waiting for something to come back. I froze. He gestured to the seat across from him. Sit. I'll buy you a cup. I'm working. Then consider this part of your work. Listening counts too. Something about his tone, gentle but sure, made it impossible to refuse. So I sat. For a while, we just listened to the rain. Then he asked softly, You ever wonder why people we love hurt us the most? I said nothing. He nodded like he already knew the silence. Because they're the mirrors brave enough to show us the parts we refuse to see. My throat tightened. He didn't know me, but somehow he did. I told him everything. About Clara, the bank, the humiliation, the quiet house. When I finished, I felt lighter and heavier at the same time. He sipped his coffee, thoughtful. Fear runs through families like a quiet inheritance, he said. But every generation gets to decide whether to spend it or transform it. I looked down at my hands. You sound like you teach somewhere. No, he said with a small smile. I just pay attention. He leaned back, studying me gently. Tell me, Mrs. Collins, when your daughter asked for help, why did you say no? I didn't answer right away, because I already knew. I was scared, I said finally. Scared she'd fail, scared she'd end up like me, holding on to broken things. He nodded. Fear wears many masks, but the one it loves most is called protection. I let out a shaky laugh. So you think I did this to myself? No, he said quietly. I think you created the storm that could wash you clean. That line hit something deep. Then he asked, You taught for 30 years, right? Yes. Ever push a student too hard because you thought it was for their own good? A memory flashed. A girl named Diane, crying in the hallway because I'd told her she wasn't ready for college. I swallowed hard. Yes, I thought I was helping her. Sometimes, the lesson we fail to learn, gently, comes back louder, he said. You taught control. Life sent you someone who refused to be controlled. I blinked, stunned. You talk like you know her. I don't, he said, smiling faintly. But I know how reflection works. When we deny others freedom, we eventually lose ours. His words sank deep, slow, like ink into paper. He finished his coffee and stood. Before you go home tonight, he said, write her a thank you note. Not for what she did, but for what she made you see. I almost laughed. A thank you note? To the person who ruined my life? She didn't ruin it, he said. She revealed it. And sometimes, clarity looks like loss at first. That night, after closing, I sat at the counter long after Denise left. The cafe smelled like rain and espresso. I pulled out a pen and a napkin. At first, I just wrote her name, Clara. Then I stared at it until my vision blurred. And then, the words came. Slow, uneven, but real. Thank you for forcing me to see what fear had turned me into. Thank you for reminding me that love doesn't live in bank accounts. I don't forgive you yet, but I'm starting to understand. When I finished, the napkin was wet with tears. I folded it gently and tucked it into my pocket like a prayer. That night, I dreamed of her, not the adult version. The little girl again, 10 years old, sitting on the porch teaching 2 neighborhood kids how to make toy fans out of soda cans. Her laugh echoed through the dream, bright and free. And then a voice, Orion Sage's, calm and warm, like the sky after thunder. Sometimes, the child who breaks your rules is the only one keeping your spirit alive. When I woke up, my cheeks were damp, but my chest didn't feel as heavy. The dream lingered like a light behind closed eyes. The next morning, I went to work early. Denise was reading a newspaper someone had left behind. When she saw me, she smiled and said, Margaret, look at this. I think you'll want to see it. She slid the paper across the counter. The headline read, Greenhaven Project builds homes from recycled materials. And there she was, Clara, standing in front of a row of tiny homes with solar panels, her hair tied up, her hands dirty, her smile soft, peaceful. Behind her, painted on the wall, was a green house surrounded by sunlight, the same doodle from her childhood bedroom. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. Denise asked, "Is that your daughter?" I nodded, eyes blurring. "Yes," I whispered. "That's her." At the bottom of the article was an address, Riverside Industrial Park. I looked out the window. Rain was starting again, gentle this time, like a whisper, and I heard his voice in my head. Rain always returns to the same ground, sometimes as rivers, sometimes as floods. I grabbed my coat, tucked the napkin letter into my pocket, and stepped into the rain. Because some promises aren't meant to wait. I followed the bus route out of town. The rain hadn't stopped, but it wasn't violent anymore. Just steady, cleansing. It drummed against the windows like a heartbeat. Outside, the world looked washed new. When I stepped off, my shoes sank into soft mud. Ahead of me, the sign read, Riverside Industrial Park. But it wasn't factories I saw. It was color. Rows of small homes stretched across the field. Metal and wood, painted soft green and cream. Each one had solar panels glinting under the gray sky. There were children running barefoot through puddles, volunteers carrying buckets of paint, women laughing as they planted flowers along fences. And in the middle of it all, Clara. Her hair was tied up, streaked with rain and sawdust. She wore a faded green shirt with the words, Greenhaven Project, across the front. And her face, I hadn't seen that peace in her eyes since she was little. For a moment, I couldn't move. The world blurred, not because of the rain, but because my heart was pounding too loud to hear anything else. I stood at the edge of the lot, gripping my wet coat, telling myself I shouldn't be here, that I didn't belong in this new world she'd built without me. Then she turned, just slightly, like she felt something shift. Her eyes found me instantly. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The noise, the laughter, even the rain seemed to hold its breath. I panicked. Every instinct screamed to leave, to turn away before the rejection could hit. I turned to go, but before I could take a second step, I heard her voice. Mom. It was soft, unsure, almost childlike. I froze. Footsteps splashed through puddles behind me. And then, suddenly, arms around me, tight, trembling, familiar. You taught me how to build, Mom, she whispered. I just built bigger. I turned, and for the first time in a year, really saw her, not as a daughter who betrayed me, but as a woman who had grown beyond the fear I'd handed her. She pulled back just enough to look at me. Rain ran down her cheeks, mixing with tears. I couldn't tell whose were whose. Clara, I breathed. Why didn't you tell me? She bit her lip, shaking her head. Because you would have stopped me. I opened my mouth, ready to argue, and stopped. Because she was right. You wouldn't have believed I could do it, she said softly. And maybe I couldn't. Not if I still needed your permission. She took my hand, pressing it to her chest. So I took what you'd been saving for safety and used it for courage. She led me toward one of the small houses. Inside, it smelled of paint, rain, and warm wood. The walls were clean but humble. Sunlight streamed through recycled glass windows. Each home here, she said, is made from old shipping containers. We insulate them, add solar panels, give them to families moving out of shelters. She touched the window frame like it was sacred. We've built 42 so far. By the end of next year, maybe 100. I swallowed hard. With my money. She nodded. It was never about the money, Mom. It was about the lesson you gave me. To do something meaningful. I just couldn't wait for you to see it. I looked around at the room. A simple table, 2 chairs, a photo of volunteers smiling in the rain. One of the chairs had her name carved into it, Clara C. The other, my name. Why is my name here? I whispered. She smiled faintly. Because this project started with you. The grant paperwork, the business registration. They needed a co-signer when I had no credit. So I used your name. You didn't know it, but you were part of this from the beginning. Her words landed slow, each one like a tiny thaw. Mom, I didn't steal from you. I invested everything you ever taught me. Hard work, persistence, integrity. Into something that could outlive both of us. My throat closed. All I could manage was a whisper. And you didn't think I'd understand? She laughed softly, shaking her head. No, Mom. I thought you'd stop me. You always taught me to play safe. But you also taught me to care. I just stopped waiting for those 2 lessons to agree with each other. We sat at the small table. She poured coffee from an old thermos. It tasted burnt, but I drank it anyway, because it was hers. The rain had eased outside. Through the open door, I could see children helping volunteers plant small trees. Their laughter floated in, light and easy. Clara watched them, eyes full of quiet pride. They'll grow up here, she said. Safe, independent. Every house produces its own energy, its own food. People call it innovation. I call it survival. Just learned from you in a new way. I reached across the table, took her hand. Clara, I was so angry at you. I know. I thought you destroyed everything I built. I did, Mom, she said gently. But only the parts that were keeping you from breathing. I didn't even realize I was crying until she squeezed my hand. I wanted to call, she said. 100 times I wanted to tell you, but I thought if you saw me too soon, you'd still see the thief, not the builder. I wiped my face, laughing through tears. And now I see both, she said. The woman who saved and the woman who built. We stepped outside. The rain had stopped completely, but the ground still shimmered. Clouds parted just enough for sunlight to break through. Gold and gentle. I looked at her, this daughter of mine, standing on soil made from both our mistakes. And for the first time, I understood what Orion Sage meant when he said, "The storm that destroys the house also waters the garden." One of the volunteers waved at her. "Clara, the mayor's office called. They approved the expansion." She grinned. "That means 30 more homes, Mom. 30 families who'll never have to beg for electricity again." She turned back to me. "You see now why I couldn't wait?" I nodded, voice shaking. "Yes, baby, I see." For a moment, we just stood there, mother and daughter, watching the workers build. The sound of hammers and laughter mixed with the chirping of birds. A strange symphony of renewal. I whispered, "Your father would have been proud." "You think so?" I smiled. "I know so. He would have called you crazy first, then proud." We both laughed, and in that laughter, I heard something I hadn't in a long time. Forgiveness, folding itself quietly between us. Later, as the sun broke through fully, a car pulled up. Out stepped a man in a gray coat, holding a small notebook. It was him, Orion Sage. Clara turned, surprised. "Mr. Orion Sage, you came." He nodded. "I don't miss endings," he said simply. He looked at me, eyes warm with knowing. "And beginnings," he added, "often hide inside them." Clara hugged him. "Thank you for helping her find me." He smiled. "No, she found herself, and then, naturally, she found you." As he turned to leave, I called after him. "Mr. Orion Sage," I said, "you were right. She didn't steal my money. She stole my fear." He smiled. that calm smile of his. No, Mrs. Collins. She returned your freedom. She just wrapped it in pain so you'd open it slowly. After he left, Clara and I stood together under the brightening sky. Wind brushed through the new trees, carrying the smell of wet soil. Clean, alive, I slipped my hand into hers. Clara, I said quietly, you turned my fear into something I never could. Hope. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and you gave me the roots to hold it steady. For the first time in years, I felt whole again. Not because I got anything back, but because I finally understood what I'd never really lost. When I got home that night, I unfolded the napkin I'd written on days ago. The ink had blurred, but the words were still legible. I added one more line at the bottom. You didn't break my heart, Clara. You broke it open. Then I placed it under the world's best teacher mug, or what was left of it, and smiled, because maybe the mug had been right all along. I was the best teacher. I just hadn't realized my last lesson was never meant for a classroom. If this family drama story touched your heart, comment yes, because forgiveness isn't about them. It's about freeing the part of you still waiting for an apology. Subscribe for more family drama stories, guided by Orion Sage. Grandma stories that don't just heal, they awaken. It's strange how quiet peace can be. You spend so long praying for it to come, and when it finally does, it doesn't arrive with trumpets or sunlight. It just sits beside you, quietly, like an old friend you didn't recognize. A week after seeing Clara, I went back to the cafe. Denise smiled when I walked in. She said I looked lighter. Maybe I did. Maybe forgiveness is the best facelift time can give. The cafe felt different now. Same tables, same smell of roasted beans. But I wasn't the same woman who wiped those counters in silence. On the wall near the register, Denise had pinned an article, the one about the Green Haven Project. Someone had written in pen across the top, "Hope built here." I traced the headline with my fingertips, and for the first time, that word, hope, didn't feel like something distant. It felt like home. Later that day, I went to the park near the old school, where I used to teach. Spring had just begun. The air soft with the smell of lilacs. Children ran across the grass, shouting, chasing kites. I sat on a bench, the same one I'd used during my lunch breaks all those years. Back then, I used to sit here, grading papers, worrying about bills, wishing for more time. Now I just watched. Across the path, a young mother was teaching her son how to ride a bike. He fell once, twice, then again. Each time, she helped him up, not scolding, not panicking, just smiling. The boy finally pedaled on his own, squealing in triumph. The mother clapped and laughed, proud but calm. And that's when it hit me. I'd spent most of Clara's childhood trying to keep her from falling, when all she really needed was the space to learn how to balance. I whispered, half to myself, "You did good, Clara. You really did." That evening, Clara came by my apartment. No reporters, no cameras, no explanations. Just her, carrying takeout from our favorite diner, the same one we used to go to every Friday when she was a teenager. She kicked off her shoes like she used to and said, "I brought chicken pot pie. They still make it too salty." We laughed. It was awkward at first. Two people relearning a language they used to speak fluently. Then she pulled out something from her bag. A photo frame. Inside was a picture of the first Green Haven family. A mother, a father, and two kids standing in front of their new home. Underneath, she'd written in marker, "For Mom, who taught me to build." I traced the words with my thumb. The photo shimmered slightly under the light, as if it were breathing. Clara, I said softly, I'm proud of you. She smiled, eyes wet. Took you long enough. We both laughed until tears turned into laughter and laughter back into tears. After dinner, she stood by the window, watching the city lights. You know, Mom, she said, every time I thought about giving up, I'd hear your voice in my head. My voice? Yeah, the one that always said, work harder, Clara, do better. But this time, I made it kinder. I nodded. That was all I ever wanted, for my lessons to evolve into something gentler. A few days later, I attended the Green Haven community opening. They'd built a new playground, bright and colorful, with solar-powered street lamps surrounding it. Families were laughing, music was playing, and for once, the future didn't look frightening. Clara took the stage, speaking with confidence. This project isn't about innovation, she said. It's about transformation, of materials, of spaces, of people. My first investor wasn't a venture capitalist. She was a teacher, my mother. She taught generations how to think. I just turned her lessons into action. The crowd applauded. Somewhere in that sound, I felt years of distance dissolve. When she stepped off the stage, I caught her eye. She smiled, the same smile she had the day she first said, Mama. Later, as the event wound down, I found myself standing near a familiar figure by the tree line. Orion Sage. He wasn't on stage, not in the spotlight, just watching. When our eyes met, he nodded. The way you nod to someone who's completed a long journey. I walked over. Mr. Orion Sage, I said quietly. You were right. About what? He asked. She didn't steal my money. She stole my fear. He smiled. No, Mrs. Collins. She returned your freedom. She just wrapped it in pain, so you'd open it slowly. I laughed softly. You always have a way with words. Words are just bridges, he said. You're the one who crossed. The sun was setting, golden light spilling over the roofs of the tiny homes. Children's laughter mixed with the hum of the solar panels above us. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a woman who lost everything. I felt like someone who finally saw what had been there all along. That night, back at home, I sat by the window again. The same one I'd cried beside so many nights before. The air smelled of rain, but this time it felt like a promise instead of a punishment. I took out the napkin I'd written weeks ago. The ink had faded, but the words still glowed in memory. Thank you for forcing me to see what fear had turned me into. Then, on the back, I wrote one last line. And thank you, life, for giving me the storm I needed to grow. As I put the napkin down, I heard Orion Sage's voice in my head again, calm and steady. We don't pass down money, Mrs. Collins. We pass down fear or courage. You gave her fear. She turned it into courage. That's how families evolve. I smiled, whispering into the quiet room. Then maybe we both finally did our job. Outside, the rain started again. Soft, cleansing, alive. But this time, I didn't close the window. I let it fall. Because rain always finds its way home. And maybe love does too. You know, people always say time heals everything. But I don't think that's true. Time doesn't heal. It just waits. It waits for you to stop running from the pain, long enough to see what it came to teach you. For a long time, I thought I'd lost my daughter. But the truth is, I'd only lost the part of me that knew how to trust. She didn't take my money to hurt me. She took it because she believed in something I'd forgotten how to believe in. Courage. And maybe that's what love really is. It doesn't always look gentle. Sometimes it looks like being broken open, so the light can finally get in. When I saw her again, standing in the rain, smiling through her tears, I realized she hadn't betrayed me at all. She'd freed me. She took the fear that ran through our family like blood, and turned it into something brave, something alive. I used to teach other people how to learn. Turns out, my last student was my own child, and she taught me the hardest lesson of all, that love isn't about keeping someone safe. It's about letting them fly, even when the sky looks dangerous. Now, when it rains, I don't close the window anymore. I let it fall, because rain always finds its way home. And somehow, so does love. If you're listening to this, and you've been hurt by someone you love, maybe this story is a mirror, not a wound. Maybe you're not losing them. Maybe you're just being asked to see them, and yourself, a little clearer. If this story made you feel something real, comment yes below. Because forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about freeing the part of you that's still waiting for peace. And if you know someone who needs to hear this tonight, share it with them. Because maybe what we call endings are just the moments love starts over. A little wiser, a little softer, and finally, unafraid. PT Family Drama Stories. Guided by Orion Sage. Grandma's stories that don't just heal, they awaken.